I guess, second half of 2023, at the very end of the half of our Missoula County Heritage Roundtables. We began these sessions a few years ago. Missoula County spearheaded these a few years ago as a way to basically provide an opportunity to network and to share and compare notes between those professionals and other interested community members on topics of heritage, historic preservation, culture throughout Missoula County. Because as we all know, there's a lot going on, but folks are oftentimes either in their own professions or institutions or organizations siloed and not necessarily aware of ways in which we might be able to collaborate or at least learn from one another. So we began this a few years ago, and here we are still doing it today. We do these twice a year, typically once in the spring and once in the fall or early winter. And so that's where we are at this point here in early December. For folks who don't know me, and I think most folks do, but I'm Dave Strohmeyer. I'm Missoula County Commissioner. And before we get rolling into the agenda, why don't we just do a quick round of introductions? Don't need to go into any depth as far as what you're up to these days. We'll have a chance later on for a little bit of a roundtable discussion where you can talk about specific initiatives or other work that folks might be interested in. But just so that we all know who's in the virtual and physical room. And sorry for those of you online, this is a beautiful view that we have out of the northeast corner of the Missoula Public Library. Hopefully you have nice views from wherever you're at also, but we're glad that you're able to join us virtually nonetheless. So why don't we begin with those folks online. If you'd just like to introduce yourself, tell us your name and what, if any, organizational affiliation that you have. So why don't we begin with Elizabeth?
Hey everyone, I am Elizabeth Johnson. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Missoula. And sorry I couldn't join you in person.
That's okay. We'll get you in the spring here in the room. Is that the only person online? Okay.
I think so. There's someone labeled as meeting guest, but I don't know who that is.
A popular meeting guest. Okay. Why don't we begin in the room then? Juniper, you want to start?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Juniper Davis. I work in Missoula County. I'm the manager of our Parks, Trails, and Open Lands work. And I just wanted to apologize in advance. I may have to leave a little early for personal obligation. I apologize for that. I wanted to get that out of the way.
Jim McDonald in design and also part of Preserve Missoula and trustee on the museum.
Jim. Yeah.
Matt Watson is with the Historical Museum of Missoula.
Kent Watson, landscape architect and historian, former member of the HBC, Missoula, etc., and continuing interest in things in Missoula.
Good afternoon, Chuck Krauser. I'm the Chief Lands and Communities Officer for Missoula County.
Kyla Leonards with Lands and Communities Office Administrator. You may know me from the Commissioner's Office, but I recently transitioned and now I work at Lands and Communities.
I'm Dave Strohmeyer, and I formerly worked with Historical Research Associates as a public historian here in Missoula, Montana. Local government.
Liz Dollinar, I'm one of the new archaeologists at Phelan, just starting in September.
I'm Smith with the volunteer with the honor of
That's fine.
Sharon Gressel, the Upper Swan Valley Historical Society. I am Sands. Used to work at the Historical Museum of Fort Missoula and do the Historical Society. Currently, I'm on the Frank Board.
And last but not least, introductions.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm late. Thompson Smith, Salish Kalispell Culture Committee.
Great. Oh, and look who we have online joining us.
Is that me?
That would be you, yes.
Okay.
I'm Leif Fredrickson. I'm the director of the public history program at the University of Montana.
Right. Thanks for joining us, Leif. I think that's everyone. So why don't we just dive into the agenda here? We've got a few items that we identified in advance, and then there's, I'm sure, a lot that each of you would like to share that is not on the agenda. So to kick things off, and especially since Juniper, you need to ditch us early today, let's have a little bit of an update on Lalonde.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so, and Chet will take you through this a little bit.
You've had
You
practice
handle,
recently,
I
so I
know.
think you're going to be
You handle
perfect.
the historical
So first,
preservation.
orient everyone to
Yeah.
where the Lalonde Ranch is. So
Well, we have a really unique site that is located here in the western part of the valley, very close off of Highway 61. What exit that is now? Airport. Thank you. Right near Big Sky Brewery, if you can picture the Lalonde Ranch, which is a historic ranch that dates back. Gosh, who can remember when the homestead was?
1870s.
Thank you. It's such a unique site, and so for those of you who haven't visited it, please know that you are able to. It is open to the public. It's owned by Missoula County. Right now, we do not have an invitation there or a way necessarily to invite folks to the site, but we hope to have that in the future. But it is a place where you can go right now, and walk around the grounds and get a visual idea for what this site is. For those of you who aren't aware, but most of the folks in this room, I think, are, because we participated in a lot of kind of community engagement and planning around this site of what its future should be moving forward. And over the last few years, a number of us created a working group where we discussed, and Meyer, who else participated, met for a number of facilitated sessions and come up with a vision and a strategic plan for that over the long term. And that culminated in the commission passing a resolution and adopting our strategic framework for Lalonde, stating that it was the county's commitment to preserve this site for historic and interpretive, and educational, and community engagement purposes into the future. So what that means is that our intent is that this will not be a site that might be sold off or might be put to some other use that could impact those goals that we have set out in that strategic plan. So that's all been really great background work. Again, culminating in this resolution of stated commitment from the county. That's been going on for a number of years, but the more recent updates, for those of you who maybe haven't heard of what's been going on just in this past year, is that, kind of building off of this goal to have, we've entered into a partnership with CFAC, Community Food and Agricultural Coalition, to have them co-locate out there, to use the main ranch house. So as you go out there, you'll see the main brick home. They have moved their kind of operations in the base of the office into that building. And so we have folks now with a regular presence on the site, working with the county cooperatively to make sure that the site is maintained and is well looked after, but also to be bringing in activities around the intersection between their mission in terms of advancing conversations around agriculture, both past, present, and future for Missoula Valley, and how that intersects and kind of leads in with the site system and the development of agriculture in the Missoula Valley over many decades. So it's a very cool partnership. In order to prepare for them to locate out there, we also had to do a pretty extensive renovation of the interior of that ranch house. So we have not done any exterior work, but we did work with our facilities department and a really great contractor that we were really happy with at the end of the day. If anybody needs recommendation for somebody, we refinished floors and replaced them, woven where necessary. Electrical work, critical kind of utility and safety pieces to HVAC and some replacement of windows and upgrading the bathrooms. And it was pretty extensive. The place is looking great. Really happy with the way it turned out. And CFAC, again, has their offices in there now and are just like ecstatic with the way that the office is functioning for them. And they've had a couple of events even so far out there that have brought the public to come and engage the site. So just like a really positive year, but like if you turn the perspective, I think a little bit beyond even the year, just such a great trajectory over the last, I don't know, can you give it a time frame? Dave, I don't know.
Well,
How long have you been working?
I mean, it's been decades that the
Yeah.
future of that site has been in question. And it's partially a function of the fact that not many people realized it was, members of the public realized that it was even owned by Missoula County. So it's a great story to, I mean, it speaks the ability to actually move something from a most endangered list to something that is valued for its heritage qualities. Usually it's the other way around and we're lamenting having lost something. So it's nice to, for once, be able to preserve, restore, and actually find a compatible use with a historic property like this. Shout out to Kent. You did work on this site.
1996.
Yes. Yes.
Site plan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so again, an exciting year, but if you look at the full trajectory of it, slow building momentum. And we're going to keep the momentum moving forward. So a group of us, a subgroup of us met just recently, maybe 2 weeks ago perhaps, to talk about maybe a work plan for the next year or two out at the lawn where we can hopefully increase the public's engagement with the site. So we have CFAC there now. They're doing great within kind of, the confines of the work that they want to do and the engagement they want to bring in. But we think there's kind of a larger public engagement that we can spur out there. So a group of us just met a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about doing a site master plan, an interpretive plan, and, knock on wood, don't hold me to a deadline or a timeline on this necessarily, but the goal will be that in the next, handful of a short number of years, we'll have sign up that really welcomes the public to the site. They know that they're able to, they know they're allowed to visit the site, they know it's safe to visit the site. There's interpretation for them to understand the history and of the site and agriculture in the Missoula Valley. Trash can, the whole bit, right? So it will be a site that's open to the public and ready for engagement. School groups to come out, for the casual passerby on the interstate to maybe stop by and learn a little bit about Missoula's history or whatever. Us to have a fall harvest party out there, or what the opportunities I think are kind of so. That's kind of where we're at about it. And I would just say that if folks have questions about it, Parks, Trails, and Open Lands with Missoula County is sort of the site manager. And so you can certainly turn to me if you have a question, or if you're in the chat, or you're pretty well up to speed on what's going on out there as well. And then one piece that a lot of folks have been curious about is the status of the historic producer nomination, which is another thing that is a priority for us to move forward. Oh, and Elizabeth was actually on the, I'm sorry, I forgot Elizabeth because you were on the screen that you were there as well, but.
Elizabeth, is there anything you'd like to chime in with on that?
I will be totally honest, it's actually kind of difficult to hear you all in the room there, but I assume you're asking about the National Register nomination. We are making good progress on that, and I'm just coordinating with SHPO now on edits and revisions. We'll continue to do that until the State Historic Preservation Office deems it ready to go in front of the State Review Board. So we're moving forward, and I will not really know kind of what date it's going in front of the State Review Board until I hear back from SHPO about that. But we are hopefully not too far out from that now. I don't know if that addressed your question, Dave, and if it didn't, I'm really sorry.
No, it did. We'll try to speak up in the room since you can't hear us very well. Not sure where the microphone is here.
Mhm.
Right.
And Chet, I don't know, was there anything you want to add?
I don't think so, and I don't remember if you said it though, Juniper. One of the things that was neat with CFAC is that we were able to cover the cost of all those improvements through essentially a lease with them. And that they are very interested in not just the lease aspect, but also being an active partner at the site. So all of those things that Juniper talked about in terms of engagement and potential events, et cetera, we have an active partner on site who's interested in that part of it too. So we'll continue to expand on that. So somewhat opportunistic, but really cool, I think, in catalyzing just a whole new opportunity out there that certainly did not exist when I started and Dave first mentioned the lawn to me. So feels like plenty of progress, to Juniper's point.
Yeah. Did we have any questions, or has anybody had a chance to go out there and see it, or
When was the open house?
this summer, spring?
I got a whole bunch of pictures I took. I think I posted a few of them, but I can't remember the date now. It was in August.
I'm gonna say June.
That's right, I think it was
I think they
beginning.
were moving in July.
Okay.
July.
Yeah, it was well attended. It was here to stay.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful event. Do you have a timetable for the master plan yet?
No, not really. We've got,
You need to speak up and hear you.
Oh.
Timetable for the master plan.
yeah, no, and Juniper can probably answer this better. The meeting she mentioned that we just had talked about some of those pieces. We talked about some interpretive work, but also like an archaeological assessment as well to kind of guide some of that. And then Matt, I think, has some examples of work he's doing currently. We might be able to pick up some of those concepts a little bit further along. And I don't think we had a specific time frame set for that other than hoping to advance at least most of those parts here over the course of the next year. Exactly where we end up, I'm not entirely sure. But.
Any other questions? And in case you missed it, went over really quickly, Chet mentioned that the restoration work is covered, the debt service is covered by the lease payments of CFAC. So for those who are interested in property taxes in Missoula County, this is covered by the lease payments and not property tax. All right. Thanks, Juniper and Chet. Fort Missoula, Matt, what do you have happening out there? Nothing?
A couple things.
Okay.
So last weekend, we finished with our last big public program of the year. We had our holiday lantern first program, and it was nearly sold out. Probably would have been sold out, but we had a little drama at the end with COVID positive and all those fun things. But in the end, it was a great program. I think we had 192 people through the program of the 200 spots we had available, so that was really good. Besides that, we have a ton of construction preservation type projects that you're going to see at the site the next year. Thanks to the county commissioners, we will be getting a new HVAC system in our main museum building, which will allow us to have 9 different zones that can be catered to whatever is being stored in our collection storage spaces. Also help with visitor comfort, staff comfort. We can finally get rid of all those space heaters that are in all of our offices. So I think that's a really positive thing, and we're working with Missoula County Facilities. I believe Thursday we get the RFP back from the contractors that are looking at that project, so that's exciting. I think I'll jump to something that's not as exciting, but then jump back to some good stuff. We went to bid for a second time on our barracks restoration and reconstruction project. The first time we went to bid, there was only one bidder, and it came in, I'll just say, significantly over budget. So we rebid the project. That was due last Friday. We had 2 new companies bid on it. The unfortunate part is that both of them were within about 5% of the initial bid that we got. So what we're most likely going to look to do, and I need to meet with our folks at the county yet, but we'll probably phase the project. So we'll still begin work on the restoration of the existing barrack that we got in 2017 that's sitting on the property. And then we'll do all the work we can do with the money we have in hand, and then have to look at some other options as far as fundraising or grant writing to try to cover the cost with the second building. But you know, I think after getting the first bid back at the end of the beginning of September, I think we knew this was a possibility. So it wasn't quite the below that it was the first time we got things significantly over budget. So you just start to think about ways to move forward. And I've got some ideas. I'm sure I'll be putting my head together with Diane and talking about a few things, maybe funding wise, and she was our former development director at the museum. So I'm sure she has some ideas. So we're looking at that. Back to the good side of things, we just got a grant that's going to allow us to paint the Crummy car, the library car, and our existing barrack building. And the fun thing about this is we're actually doing our annual fund campaign for building maintenance and restoration this year. So because we got a grant to help with these projects, then the money we're raising will allow us to take on some additional projects at the site. So potentially we could get at least 4 buildings painted and fixed up a bit this summer, which is pretty exciting for us to do 4 buildings in 1 year. We're also looking at some potential visitor comfort things, like some new benches and things like that, just to make our site more inviting to the public. So those are all coming along. Let me think. Last thing, restoration preservation wise, I've had an opportunity through a connection that Jim gave me to work with Preserve Montana. And we've gotten some numbers on doing some work on St. Michael's Church, which is the oldest building in Missoula County, not in its original location, but the oldest one in the county. So we're looking at possibly looking at a Montana Historic Preservation grant that would allow us to fully restore that and to essentially undo some of the things that weren't done preservation wise that should have been done the first time, which was all volunteers back in the 80s. So we're going to try to undo and repair some of those things. Let me think. That's about it. The only other thing I'll mention is that we are part of a grant for the International Sites of Conscience, an IMLS grant, which is designed, essentially it's a 3-year grant program that provides money to us and to a partner. To essentially the aim of this is to build relationships between non-traditional partners for museums and or underrepresented groups in your community. So we're in year 1 of that project. We're working with the Montana Black Collective, and I see some pretty exciting opportunities for programming and maybe some later exhibit stuff that we can do in partnership with that group. The fun thing about this grant is that it not only provides money for the kind of the host institution, which is us, but also for our partner. And the Black Collective is a all volunteer, entire nonprofit group. So this is going to really help them. I mean, we feel like what we can bring to the table is the awareness we can raise about their efforts and their organization. And they can essentially bring an entirely new perspective and help us reach new audiences and help us to kind of amplify that story of African-American history in Missoula, which we've always done a lot with the Buffalo Soldiers, but there's a whole lot more Black history in Missoula than just the Buffalo Soldiers. So this is a great opportunity to work in partnership with them to create some new programming and some new systems. So we were one of only 10 museums in the 10 museums that were handpicked by the International Sites of Conscience to do this project. So it's really exciting stuff.
Great. Questions for Matt? Okay.
Everybody needs a good painter. We finally found somebody who's reasonable. So let me know if you need help with that, because we for years have struggled with finding contractors to do work. And if you guys had a good one, this one also came through. Actually, Jason Howard, the head of facilities at the county, recommended the company, and they're very reasonable, which I don't think I've said that in Missoula in 5 years. We found a contractor that was very reasonable, but
reasonable and good.
He comes very highly. So I haven't had him do any work for me, but Jason told me that he was very good and very reasonable. And so far the quotes have all been, I mean, that's why we're able to do so many projects next year, is because it wasn't $30,000 to paint a library card. It's something more reasonable.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Before we go on, for those in the room, there is coffee in the corner over here. Help yourself. So, yes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Paulette Carpart. I work here at the library, and I was told it started at 3:30. That's why I'm late, so my apologies.
No problem.
I was up here at 2:15, but there was no one here yet. I'm the cataloger here, and I run a couple of different programs for the library, which I think I'm at the end of the agenda to be added. And I've been here for 48 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you about all the work I've been doing over those years to help you with your projects.
Excellent. Okay, we'll be sure to come back to you here in a bit. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, I got a text message from Nathan McLeod with the city, and he was invited, and he's planning to join us. He's just coming a little late, but he'll join us on the screen. He wanted to let me know.
Okay.
For me to let you know.
Good.
Great. Well, transitioning from the historical museum at Fort Missoula to another building out at Fort Missoula, Diane Sands, talk to us about the old post hospital.
Okay, did we talk about this last time? I'm not sure it's ever come up at this meeting.
I don't know, so recap for us. Yeah.
Well, a lot of you probably already know what's going on out there a little bit, but I can give you an update. As you know, the properties at Fort Missoula are owned by a wide expanse of local organizations. The old hospital was, for a long time, owned by the Western Montana Mental Health Center, and when they decided to move, they sold it to a private developer from Denver, who bought it a number of years ago, 5 years ago, I don't remember. It's quite a while that it's been sitting there. And his proposal is to restore the hospital by building 16 condo units out along the bank above the slough there as a way to fund, and a couple of commercial developments as a way to pay for renovation of the hospital. A lot of us who've been involved with the old Save the Fort effort and others who believe in the integrity of keeping Fort Missoula as a historic site, not a residential site, have come together to oppose that development. The development was submitted to the Missoula Historic Preservation Commission, which reviewed it thoroughly. Thank you to the staff for their excellent work. And the commission did vote that the proposal was not in compliance with requirements of buildings and sites that are on the National Register. That process has been appealed to the city council. The city council, I just talked yesterday to both the mayor and the president of the council, and they intend for a full day of hearings on that, but it's been put off to the beginning of February at this point. Don't know an exact date yet, but it will happen then, where they'll have a full day of public comment. You're all welcome to join us. And before the city council then at a probably regular meeting takes up and decides whether it's going to support the opinions and findings of the Historic Preservation Commission, or whether they're going to agree with the developer and allow for development out there, or revisal of the development. That property is zoned as commercial, but it is not zoned residential. This is a site of conscience, as Matt referred to. This is a very big deal. As a person who really worked on the Japanese internment history out there, we have been working very closely nationally and internationally with other sites of conscience. And for those of you who didn't have the brochure, I've got a couple of them. The partners that have come together at this point to oppose this particular proposal for development. There's others we might support, but at this point, it's an interesting coalition. It is the historical organizations who are in opposition to it for reasons that are obvious. There are also many national and international organizations have joined opposition, particularly those that are our sister sites across the country that were internment sites during World War II, as well as the National Museum that deals with this. So they are very aware of the fact that this would really be inappropriate for a site that is a national site of conscience. My little site comment, it says like building housing at Auschwitz, you don't do that. So in addition to the historic interests, there are also the environmental organizations that have joined this coalition, because that area in front of where they propose the development is a wildlife corridor, and particularly a birding corridor. And so there's a lot of concern by environmental groups about that. In addition, I've talked to an All Nations Indian Health Center has come on board, because below this site, there is Missoula's Sweat Lodge sitting right down there. And so we've also met with the University of Montana, who owns that property. So they are very aware of The promise was the development of the site relative to their property. Some of those of you who have been around for a while will remember all of the issues relative to the development of the site where the previous barracks were at, and the university had sold that for a residential development, had to withdraw that, and then eventually signed an agreement, a memorandum with the county and all, to not develop any of their land sites in that immediate area in order to respect the historical integrity of the site. So, and other local groups are welcome to join. If you belong to a group and would like to join our little coalition, I would be delighted to talk to you about that and have your involvement. So that's kind of where it stands at this point. It's been pretty quiet for the last couple of months, except for some reaching out to different organizations, but kind of quiet until after the holidays. But expecting January to see a lot more public activity on this, and then a public hearing in February.
Did you say a full day public hearing?
It is going to take a full day. There are a lot of people who want to talk about this. So yes, they're planning for a full day.
Questions for Diane? Yeah, Thompson.
Diane, has there been any, has there been any reach out to the CSKT that you know of regarding this?
I'm going to say, I think somebody did, but I don't recall who did. Mostly, I mean, I work with All Nations because they are the ones in conjunction with the university who manage that site. But yes, let's talk about that.
Okay, that'd be good. Yeah, as you probably know, that kind of whole part of the valley was kind of Bitterroot digging ground central. I mean, there are many amazing Bitterroot grounds. In fact, I just did a wonderful day-long tour with Lucy Vanderberg, one of the last elders to have firsthand knowledge of many of the sites around the valley. And I mean, so anyway, that would be kind of a maybe a good thing to throw into the hopper. Okay.
Any other questions on this? Comments?
I just want to say Diane did a great job of summarizing a very complicated problem.
And it's funny more detailed than one. It's complicated.
Great.
Anyone online have a question? You all okay over there? There you go.
Keep us posted.
Will do.
Transitioning to Bonner Milltown, or the Bonner Milltown History Center. Looks like you guys have a whole panel discussion today. So I'll leave it up to you how you guys want to approach this. We've got Kim, Miney, and Judy here with us.
Okay, I will go first, and then we'll go to Miney, and then Kim's project. Kim is a valued member of the Bonner Milltown History Center, and his project was supported by the Bonner Milltown History Center, but is not one of our projects we should. So I am just here to say thank you to the commissioners who just last year instituted a couple of kinds of grants. I can't remember the name of the smaller grant offering, but Bonner Milltown History Center was able to apply for and receive a rural impact grant. We are wrapping up our project, which was to transcribe 12 of our Bonner History Roundtables, which began back in 2009. We selected 12 that we thought were the most immediately tied to the history of Bonner, and those have been transcribed and will be on the website soon, before the end of the month, and contain amazing stories and insights into the history of Bonner. And so thank you to the commissioners. We were thrilled to get the grant, and I think we put it to good use, and hopefully it will achieve the goals that the commission had for having a grant like this. So watch for that. I'll send a note out on our social media to follow that, so you'll know when those are available. So I'm gonna pass it off to Laney, who's gonna introduce our coming slate of roundtables.
Yes, we have three, well, we always have three, but, well, not always, but
We'll have to talk about it.
COVID intervened, so we didn't always have three. But we have some exciting projects for these upcoming year. In the end of the month, January and February and March. And the first two are at the Kettle House Tap Room. And the first one is on Bonner history reflected in the Historical Museum collection. So Matt and Christiana are going to come over and talk about what they have at the Historical Museum that relates to Bonner, and it should be a pretty interesting program. I mean, we have the library car, which is about to get painted, which is exciting, and the number 7 Shay engine, which has been in the process of being restored at the port for a long time, and they're making progress. So it's all exciting. The second one is in February 18th, and they all run from 2 to 4. It's also at the Kettle House. It's called Freeing the Blackfoot Removal of the Bonner Dam, and it's put together by Tony Leanne, who the Bonner Dam existed from 1885 until it was removed in November of 2005. And he documented the removal and the events, and he will share photos and stories of the dam removal. And finally, in March 17th, it's at the St. Anne's Catholic Church. It's called the Conflict of Cultures in the Bonner area neighborhoods. And that's the exact details of that program are being worked out, but it's going to be at the end of it. You could stay and have few pasties at the church. So it's a treat. Anyway, so keep those dates in mind, and they'll be on the website. And but they're basically the third Sunday in the month of January, February, and March.
That's great. What is better than talking history in a brewery and talking history while eating pasties too? Fantastic.
We should say they're better than eating pasties.
Oh, yeah.
Food fight, food fight.
You could have Swedish meatballs and left side.
Yeah, Kim is delving into all kinds of cultural.
Thanks, Mike. Kim. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You might talk to, when we took the dam out, the Historical Museum got the most of the artifacts, a lot of the stuff. You might have the presentation, talk to Matt, and maybe, okay, the show and tell, add to your presentation.
Oh, I didn't know that, so thanks.
Yeah, before it's time.
Yes, it was before my time.
I got a bunch of pictures from inside the dam.
Well, as I was saying to her earlier, because they've got this big cabinet, it was so amazing. You go in there, you just open the drawers, and all the original documents were still there back to the beginning. Nobody had ever moved them or like filed them anywhere. It's like, here's the stuff from day one.
To be clear, this isn't the mill dam.
Oh, it isn't.
This is the Bonner
Yeah.
mill dam.
Oh,
Different dam.
Right.
It preceded.
What was that?
it's upstream.
It was a crib dam.
Oh.
Diverted the
Yeah,
logs.
but from that 1880, whatever it was, bull trout migration up the Blackfoot was impeded. And that's the name of the Blackfoot River, Bull Trout's Waters.
Efforts to preserve a couple of historic modern buildings.
Yeah, so as you might suspect, there's a lot of old buildings out in Bonner and Milltown and West Riverside. Probably any number of them are historic. We've identified 4 that kind of fit in a similar category in terms of they were built for public use. They're all over 100 years old. They're all still standing, of course, and they're all used for storage right now, including one for pet food. The oldest and probably the most historic is the 1885 Northern Pacific Depot, Bonner Depot. It was built shortly after the NP came through in 1883. Then there was the 1905 Catholic Church that was built as a mission church by St. Francis Xavier in Missoula. Part of it is still intact. There's a 1907 Finnish Community Hall, a beautiful, great big barn that's beautiful inside over on West Riverside. And the last one is the 1920 Milltown Library and Community Center that exists today right off the highway by the railroad tracks in Milltown. So we offered some of the preservationists of the county a tour of these in September. That led to another tour that we had with Jim McDonald and Jenny Budenberg. Is that how you pronounce it? The new executive director of Preserve Montana. And they were very, I guess, supportive of doing something to preserve a couple of these buildings and using the Montana History Preservation Grant to do that. The first one, the depot, the Bonner Depot, is more problematic. The one that we're probably going forward with first and fastest is the 1905 Bonner Church. It sits on Bonner School property and is full of desks and chairs. And the parish, St. Anne Parish, we've met a couple of times in the last few months, to devise a plan to gain ownership, move it across the parking lot and to a place where it can be fixed up, restored, preserved as a maybe a sort of a chapel / museum in the long run. So that's what we're working on now. I think that's our first and foremost. All four of those buildings have tremendous amount of history, and you can almost hear the voices of the Finns and the Swedes in these buildings. The Catholic Church was built mainly by the French Canadians that came with A.B. Hammond before they sold it to Marcus Daly, the mill to Marcus Daly. So, yeah, the voices, the walls that can talk in various languages. We're pretty excited about that. It's we've done a lot of dreaming and hopefully put some of that into action.
Yeah, I'd love to see those buildings myself.
Yeah, we'd be happy to give tours. They're all privately owned, other than the school owns one of them. But anytime, it doesn't take too long to give a tour, unless I talk too much.
Why don't you organize another one in the spring and invite all of us this?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's fun.
Let's keep that in mind.
So Ken, what, the three that are privately owned, is there interest from those owners in possibly donating the buildings, or?
I would say no. We know who the owners are. A couple of them, the owner of the Milltown Library is the owner of the Grizzly insulation business that's in the Milltown Library. He's getting ready to retire, I told him, and asked him what would happen to the building at that point. So, who knows? The other two were having a hard time getting hold of. We've had initial talks with them, but they don't seem very interested right now in the depot and Finn home.
So Kim, where is the depot building?
Depot, as you drive through Milltown on Highway 200, the last building to your right across the tracks, and is the depot. It's out behind a house.
Okay.
It's a gray building, kind of Grisco actually. And you can't see it from the highway, of course, but it says Bonner right on the one end. So It's not very noticeable. It's only been the last few years that I even knew of its existence. But it's a unique construction. Bill Taylor, by the way, is leading this procedure. He's real excited about trying to do something with this building. It's because of its various locations. There's a bay window for the agent on either side, which is unusual for people.
Is it still located along the rail line?
Well, sort of it is, but it's not in its original location.
Because I'm just wondering if its original use could be resumed once Dave's rail line gets
One flag stop.
Positive or one possible location is if you remember in Bonner, just until the last year or so, there was a caboose parked at that little parkway. Well, that's where this station was from 1908 till 1985. And it's right by the tracks. It's Milltown State Park property now. And it would be, you could wave at least as you rode by on the new passenger. Which is what you did before anyway.
Well, thanks Kim, thanks Judy, thanks Bonnie for those updates. So why don't we just, for folks who've not had a chance to share yet, we'll just go around the room, and that's both the physical room and the virtual room. And if you'd like to share any updates from what you're working on or what your organization is working on, great. If not, that's fine. But why don't we begin online, since you guys are hanging out there so patiently, and let's begin with Elizabeth. Anything that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so with the help of a few community members, we had an interpretive sign installed for the St. Paul AME Church on Phillips. I don't remember the exact address. I think it's 1427 Phillips. Feel free to go check it out. It's a great sign that was provided by the Montana Historical Society. The only other thing I'll make a plug for is the Montana Historic Preservation Grant. The cycle is open right now, and it does require a public hearing if you're going to submit for those grants. So if there's anyone on the city side that is interested in applying for those, reach out to me. We can get you on the January HPC meeting to get that public hearing requirement in. And that's all I've got.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Questions? Leif, what's up in your world at the university or otherwise?
Well, the public history program is doing good. We have a number of students doing internships, a couple at the Moon Randolph Homestead, some other ones doing some other projects, and our classes have also been working with some people in the community. I'm teaching a history of hunting class right now, and we're doing a project with the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, who's a national organization based in Missoula, and they're coming up on their 20-year anniversary. So we've been doing some oral histories and digital exhibit with them that hopefully will be something that will be included on their website in the next year or so. And then we also have a big project that we are working on, just kind of getting started on, but will probably be ongoing for a couple of years, called Grizz 130, that is about the history of the University of Montana itself. And we've gotten some funding from the administration to do work on that. And Eric Zimmer, who's one of the faculty here, is just finished teaching an exhibit design class that resulted in a physical exhibit that includes some of the materials from the university's history and some interpretive aspects of that. It's on display in the Mansfield Library now, right when you go in there if you want to check it out. They're also developing a digital exhibit to go with it that's not quite up yet. But and then next semester I'm teaching a local history class where we'll sort of pick up and develop a probably a walking tour of the university campus that will be about the buildings and the architecture of them, but also about the sort of stories behind them. stories behind the buildings, stories behind the people who the buildings are named for, and so on. So, but we also have other sorts of funding related to that, and potentially other projects that we can do related to that bigger project. So that is something that we could potentially partner with other people in the community on if there's interest in that. And then also, just as usual, we're always interested in internships, jobs, or other projects that might be something that students could work on. And I was at the recent meeting about the Lalonde Ranch, and we talked a little bit about maybe having some student interns work on something related to that. So I would love to continue those conversations. But for any of the groups here, I'm always interested in potential internships or collaborative projects.
Great. Thanks, Leif. Looks like Nathan joined us. Nathan, would you like to introduce yourself? And if you want, share anything that is happening in your world that the group might be interested in?
Sure, happy to. Thank you. So my name is Nathan McLeod. I'm a landscape architect with the City of Missoula Parks and Recreation. And I apologize, I jumped on late. I was at a council meeting that went for a while, so I missed the beginning of the meeting, but I'm happy to share some updates on what we've been working on. One thing that I'm excited about is we just recently completed and Park Board adopted the what we're calling the Downtown Media and Interpretation Plan. So we hired HRA to help us with this plan. It's really looking at the parks downtown, so Caras Park, East Caras Park, and Bess Reed Parks, as well as Ron's River Trail that connects all those parks together. Not surprisingly, those parks get more requests for interpretation than any other parks within our system. And that's just because of the popularity of those spaces. And so we've kind of come to the conclusion that we needed to have a plan to help guide the stories that we want to interpret in those parks, what's the most appropriate, and then actually where and how do we do that in a way that's not overwhelming to people and kind of allows us to tell a story in a way that's congruent with the messaging that we want to have and with other adopted plans that we have. So that plan is, it's fairly conceptual, but it does identify the different stories that we feel are appropriate for those parks. It outlines the public process around that plan. So we did go out with stakeholders. We had online surveys for people to complete and kind of give us their ideas. And then we took that and created the plan from there. So it's something that's designed to be flexible enough for the future, but will allow us to really steer the interpretation in those particular parks. We don't want to have a situation where you're overwhelmed with 1,000 different interpretive signs in one particular location. And so trying to figure out exactly where stuff will go is really important. So that's one project that we have recently completed. So I think another one is the Rattlesnake Dam interpretation that's ongoing. So we, the last couple of years, the city removed the old Rattlesnake Dam, which had the reservoir, which was the city of Missoula's original water source. And so there's a lot of historical remembrances that can be interpreted with that plan. We saved a lot of the artifacts from the dam, and so we're still fundraising to get the final funding to create what we're calling the Franken kiosk, which is a large kiosk that's actually incorporates a lot of those artifacts back into it. So it becomes, not only will it have interpretation in terms of words and images, but actually has those old artifacts as part of it too. So I think that's kind of a neat one. Let's see, I had another update and now I'm missing my notes. We have had some requests for interpreting the Chinese cemetery up in the Rattlesnake. And so that's been moving forward slowly. It did go through city council. And so we are working with partners on that to have that move forward. I think that's about it. Well, one more thing with downtown, actually. So with our river access that we're planning to construct at Brennan's Wave, one of the requirements with that river access is interpretation of the levee, the Army Corps of Engineers certified levee that protects a lot of downtown from flooding. one of the requirements is to actually interpret the history of that levee. It was recommended as a National Historic Site. And so we're working with SHPO on an agreement to make sure that we interpret that in a way that people can find out, why it's there and what it does. So thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Diane?
I have a question for you. I don't know, are you city county parks or just city?
City Parks and Rec.
City.
I've been talking to a guy named Bert Lindner who's been doing a Rankin family interpretive sign up in the Grant Creek trail area. And so my question was, is there a trails interpretive plan? You know anything about?
I will defer to our staff.
Yeah. You
I
want to
know
say?
a little bit about
Okay,
it.
sure.
That sign is being run through the Grant Creek Trails Association. We gave them some money for the PMCH grant program. I don't know that the Grant Creek Trail, was that, they raised money for that, or did?
Yeah, the trail itself, goes for about 3 miles, it's rough number, and is kind of city jurisdiction, and then its final 1 mile is county jurisdiction, but the Grant Creek Trails Association is sort of like a friends of group that helps fundraise and bring volunteers to install these interpretive signs, and also a series of benches that they're having here in the park. So they did develop a plan, Nathan or Matt, does anybody remember more about that piece of it? They've received a number of small grants, I think.
2 grants, maybe from the PMCH program. When I know they did some really wonderful signs with the CSKT and the cultural committee. I was there for the dedication. Was that last year? Was it year?
No, it was earlier this year. I just came back across the picture, great picture of Dave with our new director, Sadie Pion, and Bert Lindler and Tom McDonald, the chair. Yeah.
And I think that was the first sign. I think the Rankin sign is the second, and maybe there's a plan for.
They did 2 the first round. So they did 2 the first round, and then this is the third, the rankings the third.
Okay, thank you.
And Bert was saying they'll have some kind of a celebration when they do this spring. But I was just wondering, is the county, are there other trail plans, or is it up to Friends of Creek to decide to do this? We have a comprehensive parks plan. Do we have a comprehensive trails interpretive plan?
No, we don't. So at least for the county, I think the county, and that sounds like Nathan kind of just covered some of the priorities that they have going on right now. But no, we don't have any kind of countywide park or trail plan. We do have plans for parks and trails, just not the interpretation of them. And if we were to do them, it would be more of a kind of one-off, like, or, this section of Grant Creek Trail, because we went through this morning as well. Nathan, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, the cities, we're working towards getting an RFP out actually to get a planning process around a more holistic view of interpretation along our trails and in our open space and conservation lands areas. Because those are very different kinds of systems than our more urbanized downtown parks. And so the interpretation would probably be different in those spaces. And so it's something that we haven't moved forward yet, but we do have plans to look at that holistically.
Great, thank you. It raises a lot of possibilities for people out there who haven't really probably thought about doing something like that. There's a source for expertise and possibly funding to do something like that.
Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the room here, and we'll just go around the room, and those folks who've not shared can do so if they want. Sharon.
Well, we have a couple of things. This last summer, we finally were able, with the assistance of Tim Ryan and some of the other folks from the Flathead, came over and dedicated our native encampment display. So we have, the teepee, we have the buffalo robe, we have a lot of tools, and this will be a permanent exhibit at the site up in Condon. So we were thrilled to finally get that in place. And our current challenge is on 2 sides of our property is a private land holding. And that gentleman who owns that is trying to lease part of his property so that a 255-foot cell tower can be built right adjacent to the historical site. And we're not happy about that. So we're just in the process of, communicating our displeasure with it and our hope that they will, you know, put it at a different place on his property. Certainly a private landholder can do what he wants to do, but we're hoping that it isn't a line of sight with our site here. Those are our two big deals right now.
Thank you.
Question? Are you ready for questions?
Sure, why not?
Okay, I'm astounded by all that's going on. And I have a little history group going here. Plus we have some research materials that I've been working on for about 40 years. I have a program called For History Buffs. And for the next 6 months, if I can just tell you the names of the programs and who the speakers are, maybe it'll interest you. And if you want some of our flyers, you can let me know and I'll get some to you. So I'm trying to grow my group. COVID really decimated it. And I've actually lost quite a few to COVID and just a de-aging project. In January, I have a program called Ponies and Passes by Brew Mahelish. It's the core discovery and their use of the horses in their journeys from east to west. In February, I have Buffalo Soldiers and Band Music. That Susan Hintz is going to come and talk to us. In March, I have The Grizzly Bear in Frontier History by Lee Silliman. In April, I have Beyond School Marms and Madams by Martha Cole from the Montana Historical Society. In May, I have Steamboats, Montana, 1864 by Ken Robeson. He's going to come over from Great Falls to do that program for us. And then in June, Suzette Dussault is going to talk about the French Connection, the first homesteaders on the Mullen Road. And if you have speakers for me, I'm welcome to suggestions. My group right now is about 40 to 50. We meet on the last Friday of the month. And I try to get passionate speakers that, you know, these people all just live this history. And what my goal is to get people in our community interested in what we're doing with history. And if I can tantalize them with different historical topics, maybe they'll start coming to a lot more of what's being presented. The other thing that I have been working on for 40 years is I've been cataloging the cemeteries in original Missoula County, not just Missoula County. So from Darby to Eureka, and I have those files here at the library. They have been scanned and they are now being digitized. And I have information on approximately 140,000 people here. So if you need to find something out about somebody in your projects, you may want to start here. I can at least get you a good start. So, and the digital part of that project will probably be, well, they're projecting at least another year, so it might be a little bit longer, but I have so much data. It's just astounding. Leif, one of Leif's students is working on a documentary that I was asked to be in, which I was going to ask him how that's coming, because I haven't heard anything lately, but it's on the poor farm. And so those kids are going to come and give a project or a program for me for history buffs as well. And, you know, a lot of people come to us with questions about what's going on in the community and stuff. And yes, everyone says, just go to the web. But, and just go to our website, everything is listed there. But a lot of people don't even know these things exist. Is there a place that we could have a website that lists all of us? So there's only one place to go. Is that a possibility? Because a lot of this is new to me, and I always thought I was kind of involved, but I guess I'm not. So that's my one suggestion, and this is what we have here. And if you like one of my business cards, you're quite welcome to have one. Thank you.
Well, thanks to Dave, we at least all get to talk to each other a couple times a year. That's a huge step. Thank you, Dave.
It's the physical win. So, yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I had no idea
This
about.
is your new library. There's spaces here too to meet and have little conferences, there's meetings, study rooms, etc. that you can use here too. And they are very busy, so you do need to book ahead.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you call me. I have a little bit of influence here.
48 years plus.
Yeah.
Hey, Leif, did you have an update in response to Paula's question?
Yeah, the student and friends are working on a documentary called "The Bodies Beneath Us." That's about the poor farm and pest house up in the Upper Rattlesnake, and just the burial and forgetting and remembrance of people in our community. And I think that they're basically done with it, and I think that they're trying to get it submitted to the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival that's coming up in February. So I'm not sure. They're as my understanding is they're basically done with it, and they're looking for ways to get it out. So I think there should be a way to see it fairly soon, like in the next year.
Tell them to call me, please.
What's that?
Tell them to call me.
Oh.
They can see my files. I have a lot of files.
Yeah. I mean, I can send you their email and you can reach out to them.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Liz, what's happening with the BLM?
I can talk about a couple of things. I am just starting, so I'm like getting my feet wet. We did this summer get to finish a really cool LiDAR project at Garnett. So we got to fly drones. I wasn't there, but they did drones and then on the ground stuff. And we have a bunch of cool 3D models that will be coming out to the public. We just haven't figured out the platform, but they're really cool and really detailed, high resolution. And so you can see all the floors of the hotel. So it's really cool. And you can kind of rip them apart and look at one floor at a time. So that's really cool. We've got a ton of funding from federal bipartisan infrastructure and Inflation Reduction Act. And most of that work is going to be focused on the restoration landscape in the lower Blackfoot corridor. So hopefully, day-to-day jobs, a lot of compliance mostly, but hopefully that funding will allow us to work more with the tribe, specifically with traditional plant use and historic preservation. I'm excited to be there, and it's been good so far.
Great to have you here. Any questions for Liz?
Is interpretation part of that Lower Blackfoot plan?
Yeah, I don't know to what extent we're still working through that, but definitely, especially on the road to Buffalo and Lewis and Clark trail stuff.
We've got a lot of resources for that.
Okay.
And we've gone on tours with Michael and those guys.
Okay.
Up there. Most of that was for timber management purposes.
Yeah, there's so much room for so much interpretation. Yeah. Cool. That's great.
We'd be happy to help.
Okay, cool.
Thompson.
So we're working on a few things. For those who don't know, I work for the Salish Kalispel Culture Committee. It's one of two culture committees within the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. Been around about 50 years. And we have a small staff and then a group of culturally knowledgeable elders who are constituted as the Elders Cultural Advisory Council. And in their establishment, the tribes have kind of returned the elders to their traditional role in tribal governance as advisors to the chiefs. They serve in an advisory capacity to the tribal council. So we do our best to bring their voices and perspectives forward in many different kinds of things. And with the first audience in mind, always tribal members themselves, but the general public always in mind as well. the elders and the directors over the years have always understood that increasing understanding it also ends up increasing respect and the building of those relations of respect. So one of the ways we do this is with signs. And we have both historic signs, we have place name signs, we have maps of place names on many of the interpretive signs we've put out, over 100 at last count across the Aboriginal territories. One of the ones I just mentioned was one dedicated this past spring at Grant Creek. That was a wonderful project. Almost all of these projects are done in partnership with outside entities, whether nonprofit, museums, counties, cities, even the city of Polson miraculously at one point. But the Grant Creek Trails Association was great. Bert Lindler and his crew, just wonderful to work with, and just welcomed whatever the culture committee wanted to contribute. Many of these signs you'll notice have a kind of similar graphic look. And that's thanks to a great graphic artist here in Missoula named Joanna Yardley that we've worked with on many of these signs. Another set of signs we did over the last couple of years is a whole set of 6 signs on the south end of Bear Tracks Bridge that were put in kind of in conjunction with the naming of that bridge. Dave played a big role and Chet Krauser played a big role. And it really was a great thing. It was really the first presence in some detail, at least, of Salish Kalispel history in the public space of the city of Missoula since the city's establishment. So I see it as it's about history, but it's also historic itself. Unfortunately, some of you may have heard that last year, some knucklehead vandalized one of the signs. I actually always, in my gut, felt it was a hate crime. There's a set of 6 signs there. And of all these 100 signs around the Aboriginal territories, actually, surprisingly, very few have been vandalized. There've only been a couple of cases like this. But the 6 signs down there, one is a timeline where we try to set what we think of as all of Montana's history into the context of tribal history and show that if we were to boil just the most recent so many thousand years of tribal history into one 24-hour day, Lewis and Clark don't show up until about 11:30 p.m. So hardly the beginning of the day. So there's a sign about the timeline, a sign about the Aboriginal territories, or excuse me, about the Missoula Valley place names, and then a series of 4 signs about the history surrounding that place and around Bear Tracks Bridge and the Bear Tracks family. And the last of the 6 signs is called Building Relations of Mutual Respect. And so in an ugly irony, that's the one that was vandalized. Whoever it was actually ripped the sign out of the ground and threw it down the metal staircase leading down to the river. And seeing that kind of thing is really painful to the elders, probably needless to say, but they feel pretty vulnerable in putting their story out into our shared public spaces. So when something like that happens, it's a pretty raw sort of injury. And so right away, Dave, Chet, many of the Missoula folks, Dan, I know you've always been super supportive of this, and everyone was dedicated to getting that thing back up. And so Chet did a fantastic job of getting them back up and kind of set into a gigantic block of concrete. So, you know, it doesn't make them invulnerable to vandalism, but if anybody's going to do it, they're going to have to work even harder. That was a wonderful thing to see. I know that it means a lot to folks to have that back up, and thank you for just keeping after it until it got done. Another thing we do, have done for many years, and Diane Sands knows as much about this as anyone, is renaming offensive place names. So we really charged after the renaming of the SQ place names. There were 72 of them across Montana.
86, kind of, actually just got confirmation on 2 more sites. Almost 20.
Is that right? Well, the names put forward by Salish Council elders, about 17 of them were approved by the Board of Geographic Names. 10 of them were denied in a special little act of cluelessness in favor of names put forward by non-Indians. But more recently, this hasn't really been covered much yet, but it will be. And that is, there were 3 names in the state of Montana named for Jefferson Davis. Yeah, that Jefferson Davis. Yep, there was a Jeff Davis Gulch, kind of northwest of Helena, and there was a Jeff Davis Peak and Creek in far southwestern Montana. And this is the guy who was, for those who might be rusty on this part of history, was the former Secretary of War, the equivalent of the Secretary of the Defense, who committed treason against the country and became president of the Confederacy during the Civil War. So arguably the most notorious white supremacist in American history, which is really saying something. So the elders met on this. So an initiative was launched by a coalition of nonprofits led by the Wilderness Society and a wonderful guy named Paul Spittler. And they'd done a lot of work before coming to the CSKT. They'd arrived at names for all 3 of these places, and they came to the tribal council and said, would you support this? And tribal council kicked it down to the culture committee. We visited with the elders about it, had some discussions, discussed with tribal council. And so the response was, we're so grateful you're doing this. We can't really support the names you put forward because our mission is to restore indigenous names to the landscape wherever possible. And these are all places within Salish Aboriginal territory. So to their eternal credit, their response, Paul Spittler and his group, was great. Tell us what you want. We'll support it. I mean, in spite of all how far along they were, to me, they were really models of tribal consultation. So long story, somewhat shorter. This past September, the Board of Geographic Names officially approved the name that the elders put forward for the peak in southwestern Montana. So it's now 3 Eagles Peak, which is the translation of the head chief of the Salish at the time that Lewis and Clark stumbled across the homelands.
Where, generally speaking, is
this? Is like southwest of Clark Canyon Reservoir. So it's really down there. It's the creek that issues off it, they gave to a name proposed by the Shoshone Bannock tribe, who claimed it as their territory inaccurately. We have a lot more evidence than they do. Don't get me started. But anyway, it's good to have those places renamed. But that creek flows ultimately into Horse Prairie Creek, which flows into Clark Canyon Reservoir from the west. The gulch over by northwest of Helena is now called, it's kind of a phonetic attempt at the name in Quidlit, which means place of lodgepole pine. So there's actually quite an old name documented in some old ethnographies right nearby that translates to place where they gather teepee poles. So good fit for that place. So it's nice to see that happen. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'll mention that that we've given a lot of talks in the Missoula area in the last year. Elders Shirley Trahan and Lucy Vanderberg gave a wonderful presentation at Milltown State Park as part of the Stolen Water Summit. They also gave talks at Travelers Rest last winter on coyote stories. And Sadie Pion, our new director, and I gave a few talks for the Mullen Road Conference and the Lewis and Clark Trail Conference. Kim, we bludgeoned Kim with our words at both of those events. And we also gave a talk at the Law Students Orientation, a talk we just called Where We Are, kind of about the deep ethnogeography of this place. And I will also mention that Kim Burns just produced a documentary film called The American Buffalo. And it features interviews with Jermaine White and Marcia Pablo, both CSK team members. They both did a great job. I really loved Marcia's parts in the show. And they then reached out to us and invited us to submit an essay. So if you go to their website for that documentary and then you click on perspectives, one of the things there is an essay by the Culture Committee on the historical relationship with Buffalo of the Salish and Kalispel people. And I'll just stop right there. Thank you.
And Tom, look to your right. There's a great view of one of the rename peaks.
Chappaq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why people have so much trouble with it. It's one of the easier words.
I know. I know. Well,
Shiny.
Chappaq. But you don't want to learn Salish from me. You get like Salish with a New York accent, you get all screwed up.
Well, perhaps you and Paula on a talk. It sounds like you're looking for engaging yes.
Yes, and since I have you here, I've been trying to get access to the Dayton Cemetery. One of the things in my project is I'm taking pictures of all the tombstones.
Oh.
And that is a locked cemetery, and I do not call over gates. So.
Which cemetery are you talking about?
Dayton.
Oh, Dayton. Oh.
And so I need to find someone to allow me in there for an afternoon or a morning or something.
I see.
Because I would like to get the photos.
Okay, well, talk to me afterwards and I'll give you someone to.
You can hand it off.
Absolutely, yeah. It'll be the Tribal Preservation Department that you'd want to talk.
And just to add another little note, if you have any final publications for any of your projects, put them here at the library. We have a secure room for Montana history. And we'd also like a second copy to put on our shelves for people to read about. And I'm the cataloger, so I can make sure we get the right subject headings on and everybody finds what they want. And that's really important because we're a key for that.
Constant, I think, yes, we made some progress in renaming, unnaming, et cetera. But does the Culture Committee have a list of, say, for Missoula County, priority sites that need signage or they would like to see signage? I mean, of course, my bugaboo has always been, let's extend this signage down the highways too. You have a model, it's there, we know what the names are. How could we get that to happen? Given as the former head of transportation, all the logistical problems with departments of transportation and federal regulations, but can we do that? And do they have priority sites they would like to see renamed that we could, as our various organizations, perhaps work on?
It's a great question. Short answer, no. We are so short-staffed that we basically respond to opportunities as they arise while trying to keep headway on the projects we already have in flow. Dave now knows the difficulty of getting highway signs in place. The signs, the highway signs for Bear Tracks Bridge are there, but on the reservation, it was actually even a struggle there to get those place name signs along Highway 93. And the reason it happened is that it was just part of the package deal for the highway through the reservation. The Department of Transportation, because it was a federally funded project and the feds have a trust responsibility of the tribes, they forced the MDT to negotiate with the tribes on the design of the highway, and that included wildlife crossings and place name signs. The thought there being, when we expand highways, it so often erases our memory of landscapes and makes places less distinct and different. It kind of mushes everything together into a sameness. And we thought these place name signs would be a way to not only not do that, but reverse it a little bit.
Might be a follow-up with the Native American Legislative Caucus. That might be a way to go at it, is to put in statute that they need to cooperate with whoever wants to work on a site like that.
Well, another possibility, we have a relationship with the Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Tribal Affairs, Orlando Teller, who actually spoke at the dedication. And I think he would be very receptive to seeing what needs to change at a more systemic sort of level, especially when we're like U.S. highways.
And needless to say, it would be good to have tribal council and administration involved in such a discussion.
I mean, there's no reason in the world, Missoula, Lolo, I mean, even the major sites should have that kind of interpretive place name signage, and they don't.
Yeah, thank you. It'd be wonderful.
We are just about out of time, but I want to give a few minutes to Jim, Kent, or Chet Krauser. Jim?
Just a couple things. I'm still trustee for the board of directors of Missoula, Montana. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we hired a new director, Sherry Jesto, who was director for 22 years, retired last January. And in May, we a new director, Jenny Rudenberg, who is the preservation planner for the city of Denver for 6 years. But prior to that, she was 12 years with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The main state that she worked in was Montana. So when the job came up, she jumped right on it. You're the person that be here. So that's happened. We're going around the state now and meeting with people that are in Missoula. Now. And came to that and went up to California and headed to the rest of the state. Just a couple other things. Well, first of all, if you have never seen the collection of art at the University of Montana, now at the new museum, it's unbelievable. It's something that when I came to Missoula in 1971, my first project was to go through all the buildings on campus and find out what was in them. And I found all art all over the place, in air ducts and storage rooms and underneath cabinets, everything. It's unbelievable. We collected it all and put it into before the archives up at the university. Collected all that and put it up there. And then now it's been into others. It's going into the new museum. It's quite a collection. And then just a couple other things. A&E Design is going to be working with CLGs during Preservation Month and having different events and different CLGs throughout the state. I think there's still 12 CLGs.
What's a CLG?
To talk about.
What's a CLG?
Certified local governments that allow for the preservation commissions. And by the way, my last meeting for the Preservation Commission was last week after 37 years.
Congratulations.
Another thing, in spring here in April, May, I'm going to be doing a class in Montana's architecture for the Memorial program. So.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jim.
That's what.
Ken, anything you'd like to?
Oh, I'm just gonna drop this. Kim and I have talked about this before. You and I have as well. We have to figure out a way to get Northern Pacific more represented in the city of Missoula. There's not a single street or any public edifice of any kind, except for the privately owned station, that has the name Northern Pacific.
There might be some other perspectives to go with that. So
yeah, well,
we'll continue that
that's
conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
Just keep thinking about the fact that we have a Union Pacific, we have a Great Northern, neither of which ever came to Missoula, and we don't have a Northern Pacific Street. Moving
Okay. And Montana Rail Link is going away in 3 weeks, so maybe that's
Really?
a vestige of history soon too. So
I didn't know.
Chet, anything you'd like to, closing words before we need to move on?
I don't think so, Dave. I've gotten bits and pieces of things I've been working on have been shared by other folks. So just happy that I get to plug in so many different ways. It's always fun.
Well, this is a great session today, everyone.
Thank you.
Great attendance. We really appreciate everyone who's joined us online. We will circle up again in the spring. If folks would be interested, maybe we should meet out in the field somewhere. Perhaps, Kim, we could take a look at what you got going out there in Bonner and Milltown.
When's the next one?
We do not have a date yet on the calendar. We'll probably circulate maybe a poll of some sort to the group. And, but thanks, everyone. Have a great holiday season. Oh,
one on this date in history.
Yes.
On December 13th, 1969, the Montana Grizzlies went to Sacramento to play North Dakota State in the Camellia Bowl for the small college national championship.
Oh my God.
Who
won?
I remember that. It was the first of two Camellia Bowl appearances for the Grizzlies. We don't need to know.
Oh, okay.
It was 30-3.
Oh. Okay, that'll stay a mystery. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Anyone would like